The 2024 transfer portal is currently going crazy, and in today's video, I want to share with you some quarterbacks that either have or I think should enter the portal to find a new school for the 2025 college football season. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and take a look at some guys who I think should or have entered the portal so far. Okay, so the first guy is Anthony Colandrea. Coming out of Lakewood High School in St. Petersburg, Florida, he was a complete gem. Colandrea was listed as a 3-star recruit in the class of 2023 and would get an opportunity to start right away for Virginia in 2023. Eventually, he'd become the better option compared to Tony Muskett and would start a couple games throwing for 1,900 yards at 13 touchdowns. He came back as the full-fledged starter in 2024. In this past season, he completed 62% of his passes, threw for 2,100 yards, and had 13 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, with 277 yards and 2 scores on the ground. Colandrea is a guy who has already entered the transfer portal, and to me, he's intriguing. He has a really good arm and seems to have a lot of potential, but also seemingly struggles against good competition. He had 3 interceptions without a touchdown against Notre Dame, had 2 picks against Pittsburgh, and also had 2 interceptions against North Carolina. He struggled mightily with turnovers all year, but if the right school can refine him, I think he could be a solid Power 4 starter. My guess, though, is that he goes to the Group of 5 level. Okay, so the next guy we're to talk about is Connor Harrell. Coming out of Thompson High School in Alabama, Harrell was a huge deal. He ended up having an insane high school career as he passed for 6,100 yards with 81 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions in his last 2 seasons. He also went 24-1 as a starter, was Alabama's Gatorade Player of the Year, and became a top 35 quarterback in the class of 2022. He decided to enroll at North Carolina, where he ended up being the backup to Drake May in 22 and 23, and then this past season was fighting for the starting job with Max Johnson. Ultimately, Harrell got a couple of opportunities this year as Max Johnson got hurt, but he was only able to complete 282 yards and 2 total touchdowns. Harrell was eventually benched in favor of Jacoby Criswell, and now that he has gone through 3 years at the college football level, I think it's time for him to transfer down, and maybe a school like Jacksonville State, UL Monroe, or something like that would fit him better, where he could put up better numbers and save his career. One of my favorite backup quarterbacks in college football this year was Beau Pribula. Nobody really talked about him in the class of 2022, as coming out of Central York High School in Pennsylvania, Pribula put up good numbers, but was only listed as a 3-star player. He's also a part of the same class as their phenom quarterback, Drew Aller, but Pribula continued to look good in practice, and so far in his 3 years in state college, has gotten a couple of opportunities. This year, he's thrown for 275 yards with 5 touchdowns and an interception, and even had helped lead them to a victory in one of those games. In my opinion, I think Drew Aller is probably going to come back for one more season, as I don't think he'll go in the 1st or 2nd round of the draft, and if that happens, I think he should transfer away. I could easily see a couple of options for him. I think Pribula could go start at another Power 4 school, or go to a place like Temple or UConn and completely dominate. I think low-level Group of 4 or high-level Group of 5 is the best fit for him. Okay, so the next guy I want to talk about is Tyler Cherry. He was a late riser in the class of 2024, and Cherry was a 4-star recruit who went to Center Grove High School in Indiana and ended up going to IU. He ended up throwing for 5,400 yards and 56 touchdowns during his time there, and after originally going to Duke, would eventually become a 4-star recruit and flip to IU, as I said. This past year, though, it looks like Cherry has fallen a little bit behind, as IU had Curtis Rourke go crazy, and it looks like next year they'll probably go at Taven Jackson, and true freshman Alberto Mendoza also passed him up on the depth chart. I also think Indiana will probably go after a guy in the portal, and in my opinion, Tyler Cherry still has some stock, so I think he should go ahead and enter the transfer portal and find another Power 4 school that could give him a new opportunity, or maybe help develop him more. I could be dead wrong, but I do think Tyler Cherry should enter the portal before he falls behind. Okay, so the next guy we need to talk about is Kaidon Salter. Coming out of Cedar Hill High School in Texas, Salter was a top 100 player and was actually the number 7 quarterback in the class of 2021. He decided to enroll and play for Tennessee and was the next man up for the Vols, but then he got in trouble. He decided to leave school and would eventually go over to Liberty, where he's had a solid career there so far with the Flames. In 4 years there, he's thrown for 5,887 yards with 56 touchdowns and 17 picks. His best season came in 2023, as he completed 61% of his passes, threw for 2,900 yards, and had 32 scores. Some thought he could have been one of the best Group of 5 quarterbacks in the nation, but Salter regressed a little bit in 2024. He'll have one more season to play, and I could see him going to a legit Power 4 school, getting developed, and potentially being a top-end player and maybe an NFL draft pick. Salter, in my opinion, is a special player, and I can't wait to see where he ends up. I definitely think he goes up a level. Okay, so I made this list before a lot of players entered the portal, and like clockwork, Justin Martin actually just entered the transfer portal for 2025. He was a guy who I had on the list who I thought should transfer, as coming out of Inglewood High School in California, 6'4" Martin was a 4-star player and put up good stats in high school. He was seen as the next big thing at UCLA, but ended up getting stuck behind DTR, Garbers, and Colin Schlee. Martin only saw the field really once, and that came this season, as he threw for 179 yards with 1 touchdown. Right now his body of work isn't all that great, but at 6'4" and being a 4-star back in high school, Martin will probably at least have a chance to be a starter at a Group of 5 program, or be a developmental piece for a Power 4 team. We'll have to wait and see, but Martin should have a high ceiling. The next guy is someone I feel really bad for, as coming out of Rockwall High School in Texas, Braden Locke was seen as a top 25 quarterback in his class. Locke ended up starting out his career at Mississippi State, but he would transfer to Luke Fickell in Wisconsin. He became the backup in both 23 and 24, but due to injuries, he was forced into starting time. In 2 years, he threw for 2,700 yards with 18 touchdowns and 11 picks, but Badger fans were infuriated by him. At times, he looked completely lost, he didn't look like a Power 4 level starter, and many were waiting for him to get out of town. Honestly, with his little brother now coming to campus, I think both of them should just enter the transfer portal and start clean. Fun fact, Josh Hoover was his backup quarterback in high school, so who knows, maybe he transfers to TCU or something. Probably not. I do think Locke is at least a Group of 5 starting quarterback. Another guy who I had on the list that needed to enter the portal, who also ended up doing so, was Holden Geriner. Coming out of Savannah, Georgia, Geriner was a big deal in high school, as he had over 7,100 passing yards and 71 touchdowns. Geriner was listed as a 4-star recruit and the number 14 quarterback in the country, but would not end up really getting a chance to do much while he was at Auburn. In total, in 3 years with the Tigers, Geriner only completed 9 passes for 116 yards without a touchdown and an interception. Because of that poor body of work, I do not see Geriner really getting much of a shot at the Power 4 level, but he could end up going to a school back in the Power 5. If he's from Savannah, Georgia, maybe he ends up at Kennesaw State, Georgia State, or Georgia Southern, or a school like that. At one point, Geriner was a big deal, but unfortunately he just sort of flamed out. I knew there was writing on the wall this year with how bad the quarterback situation was that he wasn't seeing the field. Okay, so the next guy who I really think needs to enter the transfer portal is Lincoln Kienholz. He was definitely one of the more fun stories in the class of 2023, as going to TF Riggs High School in Pierre, South Dakota, Kienholz would blow up at the last minute, as he threw for 3,400 yards and 46 touchdowns as a senior there. He was originally committed to Washington, but would eventually flip to Ohio State near the end of it, and became the number 11 quarterback and the 138th best player in the class of 2023. Kienholz was expected to be a freshman and not compete for much, but then he got thrown into action. After some injuries, Kienholz would have to play in their bowl game, and in that game he went 10 of 22 for 111 yards. He definitely did not look prepared at all in that game, and so far this year, Kienholz has fallen to 3rd on the depth chart behind Will Howard and Devin Brown. With Julian Sayin getting even better, Aaron Noland, and Tavian St. Clair, there's no reason Kienholz should stick around on the roster. I'm not saying he has to go back to a school like South Dakota State, but Kienholz should get an opportunity to go to another Power 4 school and hopefully be developed. Who knows, maybe he will reunite with Kalen DeBoer again and go to Bama or something. Honestly, I'm surprised Zach Pyron didn't transfer any earlier. Coming out of Pinson Valley High School in Alabama, Pyron was a huge deal. He ended up winning 3 straight state championships as a starting quarterback in high school, and as a senior, he had 2,400 yards and 24 total touchdowns. Because of this, Pyron became a 4-star player, and was wanted by programs all across the country. He actually ended up becoming a 4-star player and the number 24 quarterback in the class of 2022, but in 3 years at Georgia Tech, he was stuck behind Haynes King and Jeff Sims, and in total, he finished with 995 yards with 5 touchdowns and 6 more scores on the ground. He definitely had his moments, but it looks like Georgia Tech will be looking in a new direction next year, and that's why I was not surprised when Zach entered the portal. I think he's done enough to maybe get a shot at a Power 4 program, but if not, he could definitely be a starter at a Group of 5 level school. Man, I remember a couple years ago when Ricky Collins committed to Purdue out of high school. The 4-star product from Woodland ended up becoming one of the best quarterbacks in the country, but later on the number 15 quarterback in the country would decide to go to LSU instead of Purdue. Maybe this wasn't a great decision after all, as in his 2 years with the Tigers, he ended up completing 7 passes for 38 yards without a touchdown. Last year he was stuck behind Jaden Daniels, and this year he was behind Garrett Nussmeier and AJ Swan, and Colin Hurley was pushing for time as well. I assume that Nussmeier is coming back in 2025, which is why Collins probably entered the portal. I know Purdue will probably need a starting quarterback, so maybe he could go back there, but honestly I do think Collins is talented enough to go to the Power 4 level, and I'm excited to see where he ends up next. He was a lot of fun to watch in high school. One of the saddest stories from the 2024 college football season was Noah Fifita. Coming out of Servite High School, he played alongside Tetairoa McMillan, who's insane, and Fifita would put up crazy numbers. But because of his height, he was only listed as a 3-star recruit and the 40th best quarterback in the class of 2022. Fifita would sit on the pine in 2022 before taking over in 2023 for Jayden de Laura about midway through the year. He finished the year with 2,800 yards with 25 touchdowns and 6 picks, and was seen as a low-key Heisman candidate for 2024. Sadly, they would move on to Brent Brennan as the head coach, and everything went off the rails. Fifita's completion percentage dropped over 12%, and this year he threw for 2,900 yards with 18 touchdowns and 12 picks, and Arizona had a disastrous season. Still though, I have faith in Fifita. I think the system and coaching staff destroyed him, and I think he has plenty of talent. Kind of like Michael Penix back in the day with Indiana, I think Fifita just needs a clean start, and he can become one of the better quarterbacks in college football again. I don't know if he will, but I do expect Fifita to eventually enter the portal, and hopefully save his career at a big-time program next season. That would be awesome to me. Mississippi State started out the year with Blake Shapen as the quarterback, but then eventually went in favor of Michael Van Buren after Shapen got hurt. That left Chris Parson in a tight spot. Coming out of Ravenwood High School in Tennessee, Chris Parson was one of the top quarterbacks in the class of 2023. He put up big numbers while he was there, and he ended up being the number 28 quarterback in the country and a 4-star player. Sadly though, in his 2 seasons with the Bulldogs, Parson would barely play. He completed 11 of 28 passes for 103 yards and 3 total interceptions. Parson decided to enter the 2025 transfer portal today, and I do wonder where he's going to go next. I don't really see him as a Power 4 starter in any sort of way, so I bet he goes to the Group of 5 level, or maybe becomes a developmental quarterback for a Power 4 school, but for now we'll have to wait and see. Parson sadly has been underwhelming, and the fact that he didn't get his shot this year says a lot. One of the more underrated gems coming out of high school was Fernando Mendoza. Going to Columbus High School in Miami, Mendoza ended up becoming the number 134th overall quarterback in his class and was part of 2022. At 6'5", Mendoza arrived as a developmental quarterback at Cal, and in his 2 years with the Golden Bears, he's thrown for 4,700 yards with 30 touchdowns and 16 picks. He took over near the end of the 2023 campaign and had a really solid 2024 campaign. Mendoza did struggle with turnovers, but he also struggled with an inept coaching staff. Many believe that Mendoza should enter the transfer portal and utilize his skill set at another team, and I honestly agree. I don't know if he will do it, but Mendoza could definitely transfer to a higher level in the Power 4, and I think has NFL potential down the road. We'll have to wait and see, but I think Fernando Mendoza should enter the transfer portal. Another guy who put his name into the transfer portal today was Malachi Singleton. Coming out of North Cobb High School in Georgia, Malachi was a 4-star recruit in the class of 2023. I remember when Singleton committed to the Razorbacks, and he was hyped up from the get-go. He became the number 26 quarterback in the nation, and so far in his 2 years in Fayetteville, Singleton has only had a couple of moments. He did end up helping them win that game against Tennessee in upset fashion, but that was really all he did. So far, he's gone 21 of 28 for 358 yards and a touchdown, with 3 more scores on the ground. To me, this means that Taylon Green's probably going to be the guy next year, so Singleton's probably going to enter the transfer portal, and I think he's good enough to transfer to another Power 4 team. I'm not quite sure where that's going to be, but I don't see him going to the Group of 5 level, and I think he's young and has proven enough to be seen as a key piece for a college football team. Miller Moss is an interesting situation. Despite the guy being benched a couple of months ago, he's already seen as a top 10 transfer and a quarterback who has an insanely high ceiling. After spending a couple of years on the bench, the former 4-star quarterback ended up throwing for 2,500 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 9 picks this season, and that also came after an insane 6-touchdown Holiday Bowl performance in 2023. Moss got benched in favor of Jaden Mayava, and so far many are already linking him to Michigan, Mizzou, Louisville, etc., etc. Moss has 1 more year of eligibility to play, and I think he's going to go to a school, ball out, and probably go to the NFL. There really isn't much more to say, but he's a good player. So yeah, today we talked about a bunch of quarterbacks who either have or should enter the transfer portal, and what do you guys think? Where do you think these guys are going to end up? What quarterback did I miss? And what topic should I do next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.